That was a well thought out fight, Monochrome Eeb. Right back at ya, edgy Eeb. That was a cute little display of power you guys showed, but it will never surpass mine. He's too powerful. Oh, you guys are still here? Be gone. Color can change a lot in a video game. Well, at least more than you think. It's another major aspect of video games that need to be focused on. I mean, game developers do focus on it. That's why everything in a game has a specific color chosen to represent it. Here we go again, talking about the old days of video games. I'm gonna keep this short. In the past, the color range was limited because of the amount of bits in the console or arcade. Arcades were more powerful, so all early day colorful games would be seen there, like Pac-Man and stuff. The NES tried its best to make colors vast, and although it was more colorful than the Atari 2600, it still had a ways to go before it reached arcade level. I mean, if you compare Pac-Man on the Atari 2600 to Pac-Man on the NES to Pac-Man on the arcade, you would see which machine was more powerful. But obviously, the next generation of gaming after the NES was able to bring greater range of colors, resulting in games looking better than ever before. Colors are everywhere in a game. Even the lowest of detailed thing will have color on it. The difference in color choice for a game can be night and day in some games. You've got different groups of color ranges throughout the vast amount of games that exist. Let's narrow it down to 3 groups to make things easier for us. So the 3 groups are realistic, eerie, and cartoony. So realistic is pretty self-explanatory. Games that try to go for realism all have a certain style going for it. All the colors used in these games are pretty much the same colors you would see in your normal day. Colors aren't too vibrant. They pretty much have to blend with everything around it, and well, it's logical. Grass would be green, skies would be blue, black, or orange, and structures would have the color their materials are. So wood would be some sort of brown, skyscrapers would be either a stone color or a metal color. You get the point. The colors are just doing their job in making the game look realistic. This is appealing to some because, well, you got the type of people who are looking for the most realistic graphics, and this color scheme wouldn't bother them too much. But guess what? I don't really care about realism. I want color. Eerie colors are for horror games. This is where darkness is used at its finest. Horror games want the environments to be as mysterious and hard to navigate through, so they will typically make the game dark in terms of lighting. But they also wouldn't want anything to pop out to the player to make it hard to navigate through. So objects around the player would be as dull and dark as it could possibly be before losing what makes it that object. Enemies in those games would also be somewhere between the color scheme of pale and colorless. You know, when I list it like this, it makes me realize why I tend to avoid horror games. The cartoony aesthetic in video games have a range between anime and cartoon. Both have their similarities and differences. For instance, the colors are much more vibrant compared to the other 2 groups I went over. However, anime tends to be more colorful than cartoony. I mean, the easy way to see that is by looking at Dragon Ball FighterZ, but that's a fighting game. So instead, look at Persona 5. That game is just so colorful, but a cartoony aesthetic would be something like Rayman Origins, which is absolutely colorful. However, it's 2D and everything pops out easier that way. So to make it even with Persona 5, look at Wind Waker. A pretty vibrant game for sure, but the effects on that game is much less than a game like Persona 5. One can make the argument that Persona 5 came later than Wind Waker, so Breath of the Wild will also do. It's got more of a cartoony look than anime. Bear in mind, I'm focusing on colors and how they're used, not character designs and stuff. Now that I think about it, I could have just said Animal Crossing for a cartoony look. Themes with color do come from time to time depending on what you're looking for. Are you talking about a game? An environment? Well, the easiest example I can give of color themes is the Persona series.
Each game has its own respective color scheme. Not only do you see it in the box art, but the game's UI, art style, and environment would typically carry out the main color. It's really hard to find more examples of a whole game having a color theme, but it isn't hard for environments. Mario games mostly have the theme of happy, so the worlds would have colors with happy connotations. Some Sonic games go for an edgy theme, so its colors would have some bright but mostly dark mixed with each other. And it doesn't even have to be a whole game theme idea either. Certain locations like the Lost Woods in Zelda are supposed to have the theme of mystery, so the colors would be pretty dull and hard to distinguish. There are so many things I could talk about in terms of colors, but I didn't want this video to be too long, so I'm gonna keep the next points pretty short. Box arts would choose the colors wisely so it could appeal to a certain audience. Do you want something happy? Here. Have a bright looking box that pretty much suggests the game is gonna be wacky and you will be happy playing it. Also, have you noticed that remakes and remasters of games would look much brighter than the originals? Well, that's most likely something to do with the console limitations, but that doesn't mean it wasn't an intentional change as well. They would want a game to be easier to look at than the original version, so they make the colors pop out more.
Well, that's the gist of it all. I really like colorful games over your grainy, depressing looking game. I don't know, I was like, color does change a lot in your day, so it must be something that changes in video games. And from that day on, I looked at color in video games far greater than I used to. Anyways, it's about that time I buy an original Game Boy so I could forget about the topic of this video.